Oh man, I'm chewing gum.
Okay.
Whatever.
It's good.
All of the boys, they wanna come to my yard. Touch up on my body cause they know I'm hot. All of the boys, they wanna come to my yard.
And we're back.
We're back.
We're back. What is this? Back. We've been doing this for 2 months. Y'all, we are at 100 followers. When you watch this, we might be at a little more, but we're at 100 followers. So thank you guys. That's how we're going to start to thank you guys. Like, y'all like us.
I guess y'all like us. I guess we're doing this for audience. Wow, that feels pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking to myself no more.
I'm dead.
LOL. But yeah, no, thank you so much. Whether you watched or you listened or you did both, feedback always appreciated. You guys are awesome. 100 people. Bad love. But go ahead and take it away.
So today's topic, we're talking about our parents being human, and this kind of is something that we've talked about, I feel like, throughout our podcast thus far.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've kind of mentioned how our parents have influenced our lives in so many different ways. But, you know, for myself, I feel like sometimes, or not even just myself, but just like in general, after, you know, watching other people's podcasts and watching, you know, therapists and different people and whatever, just seeing how things from our past make a major impact and keep coming up, like almost like word vomit. They keep coming up. So, you know, reflecting on last week's episode of mental health, it just felt like it made sense for us to finally just talk about our parents being human and kind of like normalizing that, I guess.
I agree. We definitely allude to the topic a lot. We touch on it briefly, but we don't go too deep into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was intentional. We definitely wanted to cover it as a single topic by itself. Because it's definitely something that I can't speak for everybody, but I know for myself, sometimes it's easy to forget. You know, you get caught up in the moment. You going through what you're going through, and it just happens.
Yeah.
And I think something that really touches me, and my mom always brings it up. She always says that I did the best that I could with what I had, and that was my best. And if it wasn't good enough, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, it's definitely something that kind of gets swept under the rug or goes in one ear out the other sometimes.
Yeah, I think, and you mentioned that last week about, you know, what you said about your mom, and then I just remember watching so many different, there's another podcast, I feel like I watch a lot of podcasts, but I don't be knowing the names of them. I just see it and I'm like, ooh, or someone will send it to me, like you'll send it or someone else, and I'm just like, ooh, but I don't remember the name. So if I remember the name, I'll make sure it's somewhere in the description or something. But I remember he mentioned, you know, a lot of traumas that he went through, and, you know, thinking back on his parents, and, or like specific, I think he was talking about his dad, because it was a man speaking, and he was like, it took me a moment to realize that my dad was in the same shoes that I'm in at one point. And, you know, he may not have necessarily, you know, planned everything out. He was kind of just doing, like you said, dealing with the hand that he was dealt, and then just making things happen based on that. And I think as we grow older, you know, naturally we start to realize how things are working in our household, how things are working outside our household, and, you know, how we want things to work in our own household in the future. But we forget to realize that our parents, you know, they kind of were they were in the same shoes, and they kind of had to figure it out themselves. So the rules that they set may have been completely different from what was in their previous household, and they thought, like you said, it was right for that household. And again, they're dealing with everything that they're going through, and then they're just trying to, you know, make it work for everybody. Especially when you have, you know, multiple different personalities in a house, it's very hard to sit there and say, oh, you know, this is going to work for everybody universally, when you have people who work better one way, you have people who work better another way. So for me, myself, I forget sometimes that, you know, my mom isn't necessarily good at that, and I'm expecting her to be good at something that she was never good at, and she's just doing her best. So it's hard to sit there sometimes and see your parent as a human, because they're your parent. You know, like, this is not just anyone off the street. Like, this is mom. This is dad. Mm-hmm. So it's hard.
We definitely have high expectations for our parents. I think, and again, everybody's different. For me, I definitely have higher expectations from my mom out of all my parents, which I have 4 parents in total. I actually just lost a parent last year. So the house that I live in, it's comprised of my mom, and Glenn was a part of that household as well. And then when I go over my dad's house, it's my dad and Danielle. So, sorry, I have gum in my mouth, y'all. I'm so sorry. I'm trying not to chew. I'm really trying not to chew. But, like, I feel like I've always held my mom to, like, really high expectations because, like you said, she's my mom. She's, like, somebody that I've always looked up to. She's someone that I admire. So when she does something that doesn't necessarily align with the image that I have for her, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're stepping out of character. Do I need you, like, do we got to go back in the script? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And I feel like you said, when you have multiple personalities in the house, as a person who grew up in a household of 8 people, you don't know what's going on at any given moment, literally. And I myself, I probably have like 5 different personalities in me. So it's like, I could come home in a good mood, and then my mom might be like kind of neutral. But then like my sister or my brother might come in upset for no reason, or for their own specific reason. And now the whole house is kind of like off balance because you got like 5 happy people and then 3 angry people, or you got, you know, split down the middle, like 4 and 4, just looking at each other like, so what? So it's like, you never really know. And especially growing up, because it's not like she had all 6 of her children at one time. Growing up, adding new people into the equation, there was definitely like the middle child syndrome. You definitely had to go through like learning how to share your parents. I'm sure when I came along, my sister was looking like, what? But just learning as a parent how to equally divide your time amongst your children, just knowing that they have expectations that you probably may not meet, and just being okay with that. It's a lot. And I don't know how they do it. I don't. Being able to hide certain emotions and like kind of just protect and shield your child from certain things. I feel like my kids gonna be looking at me like I'm crazy. Cause I'm an open book.
They're gonna be like, "Mommy is having a meltdown today. Everyone resort to your room."
Exactly. Like, it's gonna be up. Send out a group text. Like, don't bother me. Leave me alone. Give me 24 hours and then we'll talk. Dinner, figure it out. Like,
it is so funny that you say that because you know that. You don't really think as a parent like you're doing something wrong when you send out like a text or you tell them like, yo, don't bother me right now, because in your head you're thinking, I'm going through a lot right now and I don't want to take out my frustrations and my feelings on your child. But that just plays such a role, because that one moment may just trigger your child and be like, I don't even want to talk to my parents anymore. And I know that sounds like extreme, but like that's how some people think, especially if that's just how your parents communicate. Because I remember, I'm gonna do a lot of references, y'all. I'm just letting y'all know, but I remember I think it was Love and Hip Hop back in the day, and remember Olivia from G Unit, and I remember in that specific season, she was going back and forth with her mom because they weren't properly communicating, or her mom was communicating a lot through letters and like writing to her opposed to speaking to her like they're not in the same household. And I know in the recent movie with Issa Rae and Lakeith, in The Photograph, her mom was saying that like she was so focused on work that, you know, she didn't put a lot of love into her child. And that's not to say that's what's happening like in this scenario, but things like that, you know, and realizing that your parents aren't necessarily going to be great at everything. And I think specifically with communication, sometimes parents don't know how to communicate, especially if you didn't grow up in a household where their own parents were communicating with them like that. Because I know specifically me and my dad clashed heads a lot because I'm very vocal in how I speak. And it took me a while to get there. So now it's like, nah, we're not turning this off because y'all wanted to know how I was feeling. Y'all gonna hear everything. Like, blah. But you know, we clash a lot because he's more so like, you know, oh, it's cool. Like, you know, you're an adult now, so I don't necessarily have to like look over you, which is true. But there's certain things where it's like, you know, there should be a bonding moment, or there should be, you know, a bit more consideration for that. And it's just more so like a brush over. But I have to consider that, you know, that's how he grew up. Like, my dad is the I don't think he's the youngest, but again, he has 8 siblings as well. So they were all in one big household. And my grandmother, she stayed at home. She got her 6th grade education and everything, but she had to take care of her kids. Mm-hmm. Like, she started having kids fairly early on, so she had to go out there and work and do what she had to do to take care of kids. And then their dad is always at work. So when is there really time to sit there and communicate, like, what's going on? So I had to take a step back a lot with our, disagreements and butting heads to sit and say, okay, like, he's not used to communicating like that. And then being a woman on top of that, like, and we tend to be very vocal and emotional and things like that plays such a huge role. So to your scenario of, just sending out a text message, it's just like, it's starting to become common, Not to say that's a bad thing to sit there and say, oh, like, hey, guys, like, I need today. Because, again, you're still human as a parent to sit there and say, I really can't handle everything that's going on today. I really need this moment. So moving forward, I can handle all that. So I think it's just one of the key players that just plays a role into this topic. That was a lot.
No, you're fine. No, 100%. Like, sorry if you hear my stomach, with the recent passing of Glenn, mm-hmm. I've really seen my mom in, like, a different light. Mm-hmm. And, like, for some background, like, my mom and Glenn were married for 13 years, and that was, like, her rock or whatever. Yeah. And, like, when Glenn came into our lives, we were fairly still young. Like, my older sister might have been, like, don't give me the lying. I want to say I was 11, so she had to be 13. Like, we were not kids, but we weren't, like, adults.
Yeah.
And the dynamic of our household was very open. Like, it wasn't, of course, there was, like, that, I can't tell you everything, right. But I know that if I needed to tell you, like, the door was open kind of vibe. My mom, she grew up with her 4 siblings, and my mom lived in kind of like the nuclear family setup. So she had both her parents in the house, and then, the kids, and they all, they grew up when they grew up, so it was kind of like the family unit was a thing. Like, it was very important in her time period. Today,
Yeah.
But, like, when she grew up, that was her thing. And then Glenn, he was an only child, and, like, that shaped him to be the person that he is. Like, he hung out with his cousins. He was very outgoing, and, like, literally when he walked into a room, like, he always had something to say, always had a joke, always had to make a comment. That's just who he was. So when you have these 2 individuals, these 2 unique individuals, they came together and they were raising us. It was looking at them like, all right, you're just our parents. But then once, like, Glenn passed, like, I really see her in a different light. I see so many different emotions that, like, it's not that she didn't show us, but now they're kind of, like, raw out there in the open. And to see someone grieve, especially because, like, for myself, I don't handle death. Like, I kind of, like, avoid the topic if I can. Like, It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, my condolences. But I've never had a death, like, hit me this closely. So to see, like, her experience the grief, and then one minute she'll be like, well, it is what it is. Not it is what it is, but she's, like, coming to terms with it, and she's fine. She's neutral. But then a wave will come over her, and it's just like, Dad, my boy, you start crying again, I'm going to have to leave. Like, I really don't know what to do. I don't handle crying well. I cry. I go through my moments, but I'm by myself. Yeah. I don't put that on other people. So when she starts, it's just like, Jesus be offense. How do I do this? Like, you're older than me. You're supposed to be, like, the one who can console people. Right. I don't console other people. So it's not weird, because I know, like, she has to go through it to get through it, Yeah. But it's, like, seeing her and seeing how she's, like, kind of, like, showing grief and, like, all the emotions, the anger, the hurt, the, like, kind of feeling like, I don't know, whatever she's feeling, it's like, whoa, bro, like, I didn't know you had this in you.
Screaming.
I don't know. Honestly, every day it's definitely something new.
Yeah.
It's definitely something new.
Oh, bro, I think, again, just as events start to happen to our parents, because it's not to be sad, but, like, they're going to naturally, normally, it's supposed to be that our parents, die off before us, so naturally they start to see their friends pass on. And I'm starting to see that in my grandmother now, because my grandmother's 90, so she sees a lot of her friends, her siblings. I think my grandmother is literally the last of her siblings to still be alive, so that put some fear into her, and naturally,
I'm so sorry.
Yo.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And naturally, my mom, reacts to that. So, like you said, to see your parents go through different things, it allows you to see them more as a human, opposed to when we were younger and, we don't have necessarily the emotional intelligence that we do now to kind of pick up on those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't want to say it's growing pains, because it's not necessarily growing pains, but I feel like it's just a part of life where you start to really, connect with your parents in a different way. And not everyone has that at the same time. Some people aren't that close with, their mom or their dad or whomever. They might have like an uncle or cousin. But still, if you have those older people in your life and you've always seen them in one specific role, and then you kind of have to, connect them to another role, it can take a while, especially if they've always been that motherly or fatherly figure. So I think, like you said, like when you see your mother grieve, or you see people, again, just go through different events, it gives you that space to really sit there and digest, and then, I don't want to say, like, understand how to tackle it, but just process it differently. Because, again, for me, like, it's just myself. I don't have a brother or sister really to sit there and be like, oh, mommy's, like, upset, I don't know what to do, and stuff like that. It's just like, so you're going to tell me what's wrong? Or are we going to sit here and just cry? But it's like, those moments, again, they just allow you to see your parents as people. Yeah. Like, they're not Superwoman or Superman. They're not, out here fighting off the villains of the world and stuff like that. Your parents can be good and they can be bad. And, just like we can be good and we can be bad. But, again, being in the child's role, you always expect your parents to, be that proper role for you, I guess, or that role model for you, and, saying, okay, this is how I can navigate life, and this is how, this is supposed to be done. But again, like, as you grow older, you realize, like, things can be done differently. I don't necessarily have to do it exactly like my parent. Like, they tried to set that role model and that foundation for me, but, that's how they did it, because that's how they thought they should do it, because they're their own person. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that you're your own person. But I feel like when you have that stronger bond with your parents, again, it's kind of hard to sit there and detach and start to create your own self-identity from them, if that makes sense. I feel like that was a bit all over the place, but still.
I caught you. I caught what you were saying. I think that's an important point. I think that plays a significant role in how you see your parents. When the bond that you create, this bond that you created is based on memories and ideas and ideations or whatever. Like, you have, like, this image of your parent in your mind. And whether it's, yay, mommy and daddy are the good guys, or yay, mommy and daddy, or not yay, but, oh, mommy and daddy are the bad guys. You kind of have, like, this image in your head. So based on the bond and the relationship that you have, it definitely makes that either a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah. And then, like you said, as you get older, you kind of have to learn how to navigate the relationship, because it's getting older as well as you. Right. So certain things that were once cool may not be cool anymore. Like, at first, me and moms could joke about certain things, but now it's like, I don't want to joke about that with you. Yeah. Or, like, I'm not one of your little friends.
I knew you was about to say that.
So, you can't cross that line with me. But then as you get a little older, let's talk about it a little bit more. Because I find there are certain conversations that, I knew enough to have the conversation with my mom, but it's like, no, we're not doing this. Yeah. Whereas, like, as I got a little older, it's like, all right, well, let's talk about X, Y, and Z. Or, like, like, we brush over the topic, and then she's like, oh, what? Let's talk. No. Remember, you're not one of my little friends. Right.
I ain't one of your little friends. All right,
like, for me, it's definitely something that I've always struggled with, because, like I said, I've always had, like, the super mom image in my head. Yeah. Like, the stuff that I've seen my mom do, the sacrifices that I've seen her make, and this is not to discredit any of my other parents, but I'm focusing on my mom right now. Like, just, she's the person that I would say my bond is 100% the closest with. Mm-hmm. Like, I would say that my older sister is daddy's girl. I really don't know, but that's the kind of vibes that I picked up on when we were younger. Yeah. And I clung to my mom. So as I got older, it was just like, all right, things have changed.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's you or me, but the vibe is off. And we gotta like re-bridge this vibe because like we was here. I was a mommy's girl, clung to your leg, cried when you left, all that type of stuff. But now it's like, all right, sis. All right. I'm gonna give you my space. You wanna give me my space? It's cool or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's like boundaries. Set them so that I know what it is that you like and what you don't like. Because if you know me, you know I'm kind of a loose cannon. Like cannon, I'll talk about a little bit of everything, and I'll say a little bit of everything. Yeah. And like my mom will be like, "What's going on? I don't know if we approve of this.
I don't know. We probably have some good conversations.
I mean, those are y'all's conversations.
Screaming.
Though. Like I remember one time. This was when I was back on Twitter, and like they were talking about Freaknik, and they were posting like all this old video footage and stuff like that, and I was just like, yo, y'all was really out there wilding. So I like this is my freshman year of college, just for some context, and I called my mom and I'm like, did you go to Freaknik?
Screaming.
And she was like, what, Shania, what? Like, and I'm like, was I conceived at Freaknik? Like, I want to know. And she was like, Shania, what are you talking about? Right. We're laughing and we're joking or whatever. And I was like, as long as you wasn't free pussing at Freaknik, I'm fine. So she laughed. And the moment she laughed, y'all, I'm telling you, me and her, we were giggling, kiki. My older sister got wind of the conversations. I guess she, like, walked into the kitchen. I was in my dorm at the time. My sister was in the kitchen at the house. And she was like, did she just ask you if you were free pussing it? What? Who says that to their mom? And my mom's whole tone changed, like her whole mood. She don't speak to me that way. And I'm like, wait. We was just laughing. And she was like, yeah, you don't talk to your parents that way. And I'm like, but girl, we was just laughing. And she's like, and I'm not your girl. And I'm like,
they be changing it so quick, bro.
You got it. I'm gonna get off the phone and watch my little Freaknik videos. Okay. But like, it's just as I got older, it was like you kind of had to learn like what was appropriate to say, even with age, because people be like, "Oh, I'm grown." No, you're never really gonna be grown in your parents' eyes unless y'all got that kind of bond where it's like you've been grown. I don't like you. Get out. But for some people, your parents will never really see you as an adult because they know you. They've seen you at your lowest points, so they know your weaknesses and
your
strengths.
They know what you're behind.
Exactly. They've seen you through the worst of the worst. So, I don't know. For me, it's like, I sometimes forget that parents do set that little line. Because I've always looked at my mom as, like, not my best friend, but, like, that's my dog. Like, I tell her that all the time. Like, we thick as thieves when we want to be. And there are certain things that I'll be talking to her about, and I just be forgetting, like, she is my mom. So, it's kind of like, whoa. I'm sorry if that was rambling, y'all.
No, not at all. You hit a good point when you said boundaries, because it reminds me, this is completely unrelated to this topic, but it relates in some way. There was something on Instagram. I can't remember if it was a video or someone had posted something, whatever, but he had made a comment asking an older gentleman about how he lasted so long with his wife, because the man's wife had recently passed away, and I think they were together like 30 plus years, something like that. And he was like, I had to sit there and go through the multiple stages of my wife in those 30 years, because she wasn't the same person that I married when she passed away, and the same thing for me. And I feel like the same things goes for our parents. Like, we have to set those boundaries as those phases in our lives start to change, because the way my parents, interacted with me when I was a toddler is not the same way they're interacting with me now. And the same thing goes for them. Like, they are also growing and learning as I grow and learn. And I think that's something that, we have to kind of, navigate as well. I love the word navigate, as you could not tell. But it's hard, though, like you said, because there are those, like, random factors where one moment saying one thing is cool, and then another moment something isn't. It's like, whoa. When did it change? Because we've been saying it all year, but now all of a sudden you didn't talk to so and so, and that and that also plays a role in seeing our parents as humans as well. Because I'm thankful to again have my village, because seeing my mom interact with my godmother, because they're best friends and they've been friends since like they were our age or maybe a bit younger, and we're in our 20s, so. To see them grow and to see my mom interact, that's when I start to see her as human, because she's talking the same way that we talk. Like, she's cursing and stuff, and I'm like, I can't even say damn around you. And you over here talking about some F this and do that. And I'm like, who is this? Right. And you laughing because you know my mother. And then I'm like,
I've never seen her in that
right.
light, so.
Like, who is this person?
Yeah.
Shania was, so I'm like, so we're going to do a quick sidetrack about my mom. So my mom and I are very close. The same thing with you. Me and my mom are closer than me and my father. You know, so we had a bit more of a, I don't want to say a friend relationship because it's not a friend relationship, but we had those moments where we can just speak open and honestly with each other. Mm-hmm. And I remember growing up, before my mom got saved, we were going to Taco Bell. It was me, Xander, Alicia, and Jay Sean. Jay Sean was a baby then. He was still a toddler. Like, we had to hold his hand still crossing the street. That's how young that he was. I don't know who these people are, but it's
a part of the story.
Right? So, we're going to Taco Bell. My mom came around the parking lot, was about to get in line, but then she stopped and then got out of line. And these people called her the B word. Again, this is before my mother was saved. So she parks the car because we're going to go inside now, she decided. We're walking towards the door to go inside of Taco Bell. But to get to the door that we're going through, we kind of have to just walk through the cars who are going this way and the doors this way so they can go through the drive-thru. Mm-hmm. That car, who had said that to her, was right there by the door. So my mom decides we're going to take a detour opposed to going straight. We're going to do a little turn and then we're going to go. She pulls the door open and it's like, "Oh, you going to?" And then all of them in the car were like, "No one." And she was like, "Okay," and slams the door and then composes herself in 2 seconds and we continue walking. At that point in my life, I was used to my mom acting crazy. So my friends at the time were just like, "Miss D, like, what's going on?" And so to see my mom from there to be this crazy woman, now to be, you know, a bit more godly and religious, but still don't F with her, you know, like, it's such a change. And even for myself, now I'm not that little girl who was scared, because before I was like, "Mommy, we can't do that." Now I'm like, "What's good? Like, Mom, who we getting?" So
you sliding, I'm sliding.
Right. So, like, it's setting those boundaries of saying, like, okay, like, I can't curse with my mom, but my dad, like, he does not care. Like, if you knew my dad, like, you would just be like, "Is this really your father?" And I'd be like, "Yes, this is really my father." Like, we're two different people, but we get along. So, you know, to see that growth now to then and listening and reflecting on those different stories, it's crazy. You know, it's crazy to sit here and say, like, my mom was, like, our age at one point. My mom was, you know, without a child out there doing and ripping and running and listening to the stories of her going here and going there without, you know, with free will. Basically, it creates that space again for you to start to see them as human. Because I feel like I'm going on and on again, but for me and my dad, like, we clash a lot, but I have those moments where I'm just sitting there, I'm reflecting, and I'm like, wow, like, all the things that, you know, he's told us that he's endured, and then he's still out here, you know, helping his family and making sure, like, we're okay. Like, it allows me to create that level of respect for him, because I'm like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just said F everybody and went off and did your own thing, but you didn't do that. So I think, you know, reflecting on those stories, like, you know, you with your mom and her being like, "Oh, you can't talk to me," and then my mom acting crazy, and then my dad, you know, being a man, it's just like, wow, you know, like, it really starts to sink in that my parents really are other people who just happen to have children like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was a lot again, but yeah.
No, I mean, the other day I was sitting there and my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She wears many hats, but her main job is to stay at home because she still has younger children that she's raising, especially with everything that's going on. We're in a whole panorama, and the kids are learning virtually. So, like, we're sitting there, and it's me and my little sister and my mom, and she's on the computer. She was on a Zoom call with some group that she had just joined to network. And we're sitting there, and all you see is us in the background, and we're going through, like, old photos. And I picked up this one, and it was, like, really old, and it had, like, a cover on it, and it said, like, "Chilling in the City."
Yeah.
And then I flip it open, and it's, like, my mom. And if you know my mom, she's, like, kind of quiet, and she's like, not necessarily like a chill person, but like when you first meet her, you probably think she's stuck up because she's like super like straightforward, like just kind of like minding her business. But in this photo, she's got her arms out like this, and she's like on the floor, and she's smiling, and she's surrounded by all these people I don't know. And I'm looking at the photo, and I'm like, dang, my mom really was like a teenager. Like I don't remember this part of your life. When did that happen? And like, of course, I'm sitting there and I'm reading everything, and in the pamphlet or the little photo thing, and it's like Hanifa and Quadira, and I'm like, first off, I didn't think you knew people with these names. Like, whoa. But on top of that, no disrespect to people with those names, but if you know my mom, you know, like, next to my mom's name, it's like Pumpkin, which is her nickname, and then AKA Too Sweet. And I'm just like, who the heck is Too Sweet? Who is Too Sweet?
Okay, baby.
I need to know, like, when did we become too sweet? And is she still here? Did she leave? And it's the same thing with like my dad. And like when we were doing like the memorial video for Glenn, like when I sit and I go through these old photos, I'm just like, y'all really had lives prior to having kids. Like, honestly, genuinely, what made you want to step away from yourself and decide to make a sacrifice? Because it is a sacrifice.
Yeah, man.
To decide to bring a life into this world, to support it. Now, don't get me wrong, not everybody is planned. I'm pretty sure I was not planned. My parents were not looking to have me, I'm sure. But like, they stepped up to the plate and they did it. And for a part of my life, I grew up in a single parent household. So it's me living with my mom and my older sister, and then my younger brother eventually came along 3 years later. And the way that my mom handled all of that, like the stories that she tells me, and I'm not going to put all her business out there, but like just like knowing that she had to go out and grind and do X, Y, and Z to make sure the lights was on, to make sure we had food on the table. Like, we never wanted for anything growing up. And like it came from both sides. Like, my dad, you know, when he was younger, or at least around this age, my dad had lost both of his parents and his brother. Like, his brother was murdered, and then like his parents died one after the other in a very close time span. So sitting there and thinking about that, I look at these people and like, again, my mom was going through her own stuff because everybody's human. Sitting there and thinking about their stories and realizing that they like brought me into that and how they coped with it, because it's not like they could be like, well, I want to do this today. And like, I can't speak for everybody, but there was no, I'm going to drop you off at grandma's house. It's a lot of, I'm going to drop you off at grandma's house today. But when I was growing up, my mom, we was with my mom. Like, she did not leave her kids everywhere. And my father, he didn't even want to leave us with his own family.
I'm screaming. Like, that's big facts, bro.
We were around our parents all the time, which is another sacrifice, because it's like, you have kids, you have to work, you have to put bills, you know, like you have to put money in the account so that bills get paid. You have to make sure this, that, and the third. So for the way that they spent time with us, the way that they, you know, made sure we were in a safe environment, it's the little things that I sit and kind of like, I guess, not forget about, but I don't dwell on it as much because it was when I was younger. But then when I see what they gave up, like my mom, she was enrolled in school. She was at FIT just doing interior design. Like my dad, he had his own thing going. He was into law enforcement or whatever it is that he was doing. So it's like everybody had their own career path. Everybody had their own life. And they had to kind of put that on pause.
Yeah, man.
And it, like, I don't know if this ever crosses anyone else's mind, but it's like, did you willingly do that? Or did you kind of like resent the fact that you had to do that? Of course, I've never asked my parents that, but I think that's a question that kind of like lingers over my head sometimes, because it's like, you made such crazy sacrifices. Was it all something that you wanted to do, or you just had to, all right, it is what it is, we got to do it?
I mean, I agree, because I'm reflecting on last week when we were sat here and we mentioned Aunt Susan, and, you know, Aunt Susan was doing the best that she could, and it's the same thing for our parents, too.
Oh, Aunt Susan.
Well, Aunt Susan, look at you.
Yeah, I mean, look at her.
But no, like, reflecting on that, and then, you know, thinking about the sacrifices our parents have made, and, you know, even though, you know, we talked about how that played a major role in our mental health, but I just like you said, like the sacrifices our parents made. Because I remember having a conversation with my mom the other day, and I was, telling her about different things that, I wanted to do. And, we were just reflecting on when I was growing up and stuff. And she was like, man, I really, I sacrificed and I put time into you, like for you to be where you are, And we were just talking about all the times, she read me bedtime stories so I can make sure I'm, reading and on the right track. And all those times she made me do book reports, and I just didn't understand. It was just like her really putting that time in. And then my dad always talks about how, he got this house fairly young. My dad was, my mom was 30. He wasn't fairly young. He was in his 30s when he got this house. But still, like, he was the first in his family to do so much, and still is. And, that sometimes passes over my head because I'm thinking of all the arguments and all the things that he's done wrong, but I'm never really sitting there thinking about all the things that he's done right for me to have that space to sit here and say all the things you've done wrong. We're not saying all the things you've done wrong out there on the street. We're saying all the things you've done wrong in a house, in a suburban area, like not having to worry about certain things that other people in my family have to worry about. And, he always reflects on how I was a baby and my mom was in the house, and at the time she was a stay-at-home mom, so she was, take care of me. We're laughing. He's like, I got to go out there and, I'm doing night school and I'm going to work and and I don't always think about that, like the same thing. Like you don't always think about those sacrifices your parents have made, and that just makes them, again, even more human because, they didn't have to sit there and say, oh, I'm going to keep the baby. And this is not, again, to put our business out there, but my dad always like, I didn't want you at first. And I'm just like, well, thank you, Dad. Like, thank you so much. I'm just sitting here 24 years later, and I'm just so thankful that you want me now. But honestly, those type of moments make it so important for us to have those type of conversations with our parents and openly, and like not even just with our parents, but with our families as well. And this goes back to other topics of us not always having those open spaces within the Black household to have those type of conversations, which kind of causes that disconnect sometimes in us seeing our parents as human, because we don't really reflect and have those type of more intimate conversations with them. It's more so, how's your day going? Oh, she's going through that because she's this age, and you're going through that because you're that age. But it's never like really sitting there coming to like a kind of like a compromise to understand where each person is coming from. And I think that's something, like I know last time I talked about, Caucasian families, but I think that's something that Asian cultures kind of do well, because they always have that level of respect for their elders, and they understand those stories that pass down from their grandparents and their parents, and then they take all that into consideration. And that's not to say that Black people and, people of color and Caucasian, that's not to say that we don't do that, but specifically that's not just something that you see as often. Like, I don't know if it's because we don't necessarily have the time, or, because we aren't accustomed to doing things like that, but I think that's something that we should do so we can have these moments of reflection so we can better connect with each other.
Yeah. I like the first point you made, where you brought up how your mom said that she put time into you. And I don't know if y'all watch Grey's Anatomy, but I've just started watching it. I'm on season 6, I think.
Out of like 100.
I'm screaming. Listen, they only up to 17 and they're still trying to decide if they want to continue. Shonda says she gonna get her coins.
I'm screaming.
But one of the episodes, the girl, she like went backpacking across the United States. She was from the UK and she decided to come here. And basically she ended up in the hospital. Girl was jacked up. And like, they were like trying to tell her, like, you need to reach out to your parents or your mom to let her know that you're here. And she's like, no, I can't do that. I don't want her, I guess, to worry. So like, she was like, my mom will always tell me that she made me from scratch. And for me growing up, like, I don't know, like, I never really thought about like where I started.
Yeah.
Which was within my mom's womb. Like, that's where you all start. So, like, sitting there and, like, hearing that, it's like our parents really did, especially moms, like, they really sat there and, like, for 9 months had to, like, change their whole entire bodies to bring us into this world. And that itself is a sacrifice women die all the time during childbirth.
It don't make no sense either.
It's especially, and I don't know the number, and I don't want y'all to be like, all right, you gotta get your number straight. But I don't know the number, but I know that it's an alarmingly high rate of Black women that die due to childbirth, because in the medical field, where our pain is not seen as real pain.
Exactly.
So more often than not, if we say, well, this is ailing me, this is hurting me, they kind of brush it to the side. And science is mined from lots and lots of eugenics and things way back when. Black people we have a higher pain tolerance. Woo, why did that take so long to make it out? So we don't go through as much. So I said all that to say, our parents, they literally create us from scratch, and whether, you are
good or not?
Yeah, screaming. Whether you were an accident, whether they planned for you, whether you were wanted the whole way or not, or whether, your parents are like, well, we're kind of in this. Because I know a few people who are products of a shotgun wedding, or, they just, you grew up in a household where they didn't believe in abortion, so you had no choice. I think we kind of forget all of the work that they put into it. Like your dad, him going out and having to work and going to night school, or like single parents who have to literally, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but some of them really be out here breaking their necks for these ungrateful behind kids. And I just be looking like, your mom or your dad is really out here rooting for you, giving you everything that you could ever want and need. And I won't say they don't have to, but I've always believed that if you provide your child with the necessities, you're on the right track. Food, shelter, water, light if you got it. Like I feel like you as a parent can only do so much.
Yeah.
And it ties back into our higher expectations. Some people really have set the bar so high that they can't help but to look at their parents as anything other than a disappointment, because they have placed them on this pedestal that they know they will never achieve. But that's just in their hearts who they wanted their parents to be.
Mm-hmm.
I know there have been moments in my life where I have been in a situation with a parent. For example, my dad, I called him one night after a scholarship dinner, and I was so excited. I was just so freaking excited because I had gotten, it was $2,000, but it was $2,000.
Right,
like I had no money for school. Like I mean, like my school was giving me money, but that $2,000 came in handy.
Right.
And I called him, and I was so excited. I was like, I got da-da-da-da, and they gave me this and the something award, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, well, you don't need it. It's good that you got it, but you don't need it. And when I tell you, I had to pull the phone away from my ear, because I was like, I don't know if I just heard you properly.
Right.
What? I worked for that. Literally, with the way that the process was set up, they did not tell my school that they were doing this scholarship dinner until maybe 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. And I know what you're thinking. You had 3 or 4 weeks. No, my boy. That was 3 or 4 weeks to get recommendation letters, to write essays. Each one wanted something different, on top of the schoolwork that I was already doing, and all of the college work that I had been assigned. Because, schools be like, oh, slide us that quick $500 deposit.
Exactly.
And we need to make sure you actually come in. So you got to come visit us, and you got to do this. So that's on top of all of this stuff. I was busting my behind. And for him to say that, I was like, you're off script again. What are we doing?
Exactly.
What do you mean?
Scene 10?
Exactly. Let's run this back. And honestly, that moment altered how I saw, it altered our relationship. I don't know how much for him, but to this day, that sits in the back of my head. And it just changed the dynamic. So for me, just thinking about how we are a product of their labor and their love, but we, being young, we create these standards, these images. Sometimes parents just don't meet that.
Yeah.
And we have to be mature enough, because we're not 5 anymore. We can't sit there and cry and throw a tantrum. We have to be mature enough and willing enough to accept it. Now, there are certain things where you kind of draw the line. I mean, I'm not going to just cut my father off for saying I don't need a scholarship, but there are certain things where if one of my parents were to say something to me, I would be looking at them like they're crazy. We need some space, because remember, I'm human, you human. you didn't say something that if you was one of my little friends, you would not like my reaction. So I'm gonna step away and I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna go do my thing.
Bro, oh my! Did you see that video of that little boy who was on the porch and he was mad at his mom's boyfriend because he ate up all his food or something like that? Mm-mm. Yo, man, if y'all saw the video, y'all know exactly what I was talking about. It was a white porch, and they had the video because I guess they had like one of those cameras on their porch, like one of the ring lights or whatever they have now. Mm-hmm. And Mans was going off. He was like, hell, you never play video games all day anyway. Like, that's exactly how you be going off in your room when your parents say something. Be like, if you was Raekwon, I would beat you up anyway. And they be like, what? And then you gotta bring it down. Nothing. And then closes the door a little tighter and then you gotta, pull it together. That's exactly what I thought about when you said that. But getting more back on script. Like, parents, and to your point of parents disappointing, I think that is also another way of seeing them as human, because I myself struggle with stuff like that with my father, where I was expecting him to react one way and he reacted completely different, and I had to understand that his upbringing is completely different from my upbringing, but that's exactly what he wanted. Mm-hmm. He didn't want me to grow up in a household where, you got to protect your stuff and make sure nothing's happening and always on guard and stuff like that. Like, I didn't grow up in that type of household, but that's what he wanted for me. But he's grown up that way most of his life. My dad is about to be, okay, Daddy, I ain't gonna tell your age, but he's getting up there, So, I have to understand that, he's kind of set in his ways, like, and he's changing slowly because of me, because he sees that I'm not reacting that same way. But I can't completely change a grown man, who's been doing this for X amount of years, and now it's just like, oh, I'm supposed to completely, like, no, he's still his own person. He still has his own identity. So, like, in those moments of disappointment, that's how I've started to look at it. Like, I can't get, like you said, you can't always throw a tantrum. You can't just always get upset. Like, you just have to kind of accept it. But sometimes it's hard to accept it because, like you said, you're growing and you expect your parents to grow, but sometimes, again, what God has set for you isn't what He has set for them. So just because you see things, going one way doesn't necessarily mean that they see it going that way for you as well. So I myself, and I know you yourself probably have had to come to terms with that quite often. And then to your point of disappointment in parents, like, man, there are sometimes, if I don't pronounce something right, I'll, like, try to go back and say, okay, how's this supposed to be pronounced, or, like, whatever. But my mom, like, she likes to joke around because she knows it bothers me. But, like, she'll, like, say things certain way and stuff like that. And I'm just like, Mom, like, that's not how you say it. Like, and it embarrasses me sometimes. And I don't want to say it's more so disappointing, but I think, like you said, when you start to go out there and you interact and, you do different things and you learn different things and you come back home, it's like, why aren't you doing the same things that I'm doing? But it's like, you did that. They didn't do that. Mm-hmm. And, you have to understand that, like, your parents' upbringing isn't the same as your upbringing, and they purposely did that so you can have, usually, they purposely do that so you can have a better life. And I had to accept that, because there's times where my dad was like, okay, like, you went to school, you got your degrees, that don't mean nothing, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I'm not trying to show off, but this is just a part of who I've become. Like, I've learned new things. If you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they don't know certain things, so they can't necessarily do better. And I feel like for us, specifically our generation, the younger generation, back to what we were saying, we've imposed so much change that is slowly starting to allow our parents to make that change. But again, like, you have to understand that they are still their own individual people, so they're not going to completely change the way we may see them as changing, but they're changing slowly for us so we can be better, if that makes sense. So it's a back and forth kind of thing, kind of.
I go through that a lot with my mom, and it's not so much embarrassing, but, like, I like to think I'm an open-minded person. I mean, I'm sure if you ask somebody else, they may have a different opinion. But I like to think I'm an open-minded person. Mm-hmm. And I think once I went off to school and I interacted with different people, I am the odd man out in my house most of the time. Because, like, and I saw this on Pinterest. It blames it on me being a Gemini. It's like Geminis love to learn random facts. So for me, if I can learn something and then come back home and tell somebody about it, or not even go home, but like just go and tell somebody about it, I'm gonna do it because I just love to learn, and then I love to share, and it doesn't help that I like to have attention on me. So like I'll come home and I'll be like, Linda, which is what I call my mom. I'll be like, Linda, such and such and such, blah blah blah, and then like my mom will like start talking and explaining what she knows on the topic, and I'm like, well, no, that's actually not how I learned it.
Yeah.
So maybe we could go with how I learned it. And she's like, well, no, I've been here longer than you, so I'm gonna continue doing it how I've been doing it. And I was like, okay, well, you know, if that's how you want to do it, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm not saying you're right.
Right.
So like, and me and my mom had that kind of relationship, so we could joke around like that. Some people find that disrespectful, where it's like, if my mom says something incorrectly and I correct her, I'm sure she did not get to do that with my grandmother because my grandmother she wasn't that kind of parent. But my mom is that kind of parent. She's chill like that, and so is Glenn. My dad and Danielle, we really don't correct each other, so I really can't speak on that. But like, when we'd be sitting there, they always labeled me as the know-it-all because I'd be sitting there and I'm the first person to be like, actually, point of clarification, correction. Like, I'm the first person to do that, and like, I don't know, at times it has come off the wrong way, and I've learned to dial it back. But for the most part, that's just who I am as a person. Like, I've gone out, I've learned these new things. I paid enough to learn these new things. Period. Somebody gonna hear this. This degree gonna get put to use somewhere.
Okay.
And I think that's something I've always struggled with, because it's not so much as an embarrassment, but it's always a clashing moment, because it's like, you think you know everything. Well, no, I don't think I know everything, but I'm just excited to share this with you because I feel like everybody should know something about it.
Right.
What do people need to know about grapefruits? I don't know. But if I learned about it, I'm about to tell you because I learned about it. So I think that's always something that I've definitely gone back and forth with not even just my parents, but the people in my house. Like, I'm not argumentative. I'm not the person that'll argue with you, but I'll play devil's advocate. I'll definitely be the one to like pick your brain and like try to spark you to think differently, because that's just who I am as a person. And it's definitely shaking up my house. I know they sick of me. I know my mom be like, yeah, no, enough of this today, Professor Shania. But it is what it is.
No, I definitely think you played devil's advocate, and I think I played devil's advocate as well. My family, I think that's why we get along so much too, because like it's like you learn, like you said, you learn something, you enjoy learning it, you just want to spread that knowledge so other people are aware. And I, like, again, like how you said your mom was like, well, I've been here longer, I think that's how it goes. And sometimes it's like things change, so you just want them to be aware that you don't necessarily have to do that way anymore, or, you know, they're changing the way this is. But again, it goes back to our parents being set in their ways and stuff like that, and understanding that. And I think for me, myself, I said embarrassed because specifically going to Howard and then seeing Black people come from wealth and just more affluent backgrounds, and then reflecting on my own, I don't even think it was me being embarrassed of my parents. I think it was me just being embarrassed of like my own situation overall, because it's like, damn, I want my parents to, you know, be on the board of this committee, and damn, I want my dad to, you know, be a chairman, and I want my mom to, you know, have gotten her engineering degree, and I just want my parents to be great. And it's like, it's an embarrassment, because it's like, damn, like, my parents aren't where they could be, but it's like, my parents are where they should be. Yeah. You know, because if things didn't happen the way that they did, who's to say I will be the person that I am? I could be greater, or I could be worse. You know what I'm saying?
Be here.
Right, exactly. So, exactly. If my parents are doing all these incredible things, how would they really have had time to sit there and take care of a child the way they? Again, my mom saying she nurtured me, and my dad, you know, sacrificing the way he did. Like, everything happens for a reason. And, you know, I kind of had to accept that within myself, because, again, there would be sometimes my mom just wouldn't know something. I'm like, oh, why do you not know this? Or like, my dad not knowing how to do something. I'm like, yo, why don't you know how to do this? But it's like, that's just an opportunity for you to teach them. You know, that's just an opportunity for you to show them, like, oh, this is how it's done. Like, you being, again, that change and God placing that in your life for you to be that person, just to sit here and say, oh, I'm learning this from my daughter, opposed to learning it from someone in the street and they teach you, like, a way to, you know, be rude or disrespectful or something like that, you know? So that's, like how you said, like, there are some times where I want to correct certain things, or there's some times where I'm like, I want to say something, but because my mom and my godmother again are very close, and like how you sat there, you said what you said to your mom on that phone, and Amani came upstairs and said whatever. I often, like, me and my mom just have that type of relationship again. So I'll tell him, like, Mom, shut up. Like, you know he didn't do that. And I remember one day I was with my godmother and my mom, and I was like, my mom had said something, I'm like, Mom, shut up. No, that didn't happen. And she was like, don't you ever tell your mother to shut up. And I was just like,
I'm sorry, it be the outsiders.
I love my godmother. Like, my godmother, you remember my godmother. She's coming from a place of, you know, just her own upbringing and her not being able to tell her mom shut up, so why do you? But I'm like, you over here messing up the dynamic. Yeah. Like, bro, like, just because.
Like a thief in the night, they just creep in.
Exactly. Like, what did he said the P word in that sentence. So, bro, if you know the song, we've saying it together. So it's just like, if there's no issue here, why are you creating an issue? And just going back to that, like, it's just those outside factors sometimes that, you know, play a role in your own mindset, you know? Because my mom, I still tell her that, but I'm mindful now not to say it in front of my godmother because she finds it disrespectful. But it's just like those outside factors and, you know, comparing ourselves to outside things sometimes will come in and mess up that dynamic that you have created, you know, within your family, and that dynamic that our parents have created for us. Nothing is going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be amazing all the time. You know, there's going to be good moments and there's going to be bad moments, but that's a part of life. And I think, again, just seeing our parents as human, understanding, again, the dynamic that they've created and accepting it and being thankful for it. And then when we have the opportunity to move on forward in our lives, taking what we need, you know, respecting what has been done, but, you know, moving forward and making that change so it's constantly growth within the generations to come.
Which is honestly what we're looking for. Like, our parents, like you said, usually the goal is, I'm going to do this differently than how my parents did it. That's usually what a lot of parents say. Like, I don't want my kids to grow up the way I had to. Yeah. So they go out and they work extra hard, or they work, you know, at a moderate pace, whatever their pacing is, and they go to make a better future for you. And we've been afforded a lot of things that our parents and their parents and their parents' parents have not been. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, this is a whole nother topic for another day, but I think a lot of us take that for granted.
Yeah, we do.
But just knowing that your parents want better for you and wanting better for your parents, going back to what you said, it's not necessarily that you are embarrassed, but you see all of the amazing things or all of the things that other people are doing, and you're like, Dad, I know my mom could be killing it at that. Right. I know my dad would have been, like, superb in that position. Right. So it's just like you come home, and it's not that you are embarrassed, but for me, it usually comes from a place of, like, sadness, I guess, because it's like, Dad, my boy, like, imagine how things would have been different if you would have been able to do half of the things you wanted to do. If not necessarily if I hadn't been born, but if you were given the same opportunities as me, I'm sure you wouldn't have had to go through nearly a tenth of the things you went through when it came to raising me, or just like your career or the things in your life. And I think for some parents, they don't understand where that's coming from. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, you're judging me. You're trying to make me feel not necessarily less than, but like you feel like because you went out and did X, Y, and Z that you can one up me or you have something over me. And that's not the case. It's just, I know that had things worked out differently, you probably would have been a FLOTUS or the first female president, or, you know, like, you probably would be sitting on somebody's board or committee, trustee, something like that. So with the two people that came together, and as the village grew, the 4 people that have had some sort of influence in my life, I sit and I think about it, and I'm just like, yo, bro, y'all are all such different people, and I have such different relationships with you, and certain people will look at those relationships and be like, you get to talk to your mom like that? You get to talk to your dad like that? You get to talk... Yes, now mind your business. Before I start talking to your mom like that, get away from me. Like, leave me alone. Like, I don't question everyone's relationships with their parents, because I genuinely don't know how y'all came to be. Exactly. I will side-eye some things, but I try not to speak on them. It be taking a lot, but I try not to speak on it, because it's like, that's your relationship with your parent.
Right. And no, it's totally right, because, again, I think that's why it's important for families, whether it's your immediate family, larger families, whether it's your friend family, whatever, like, friend family mean like your friends and y'all close like that, but like to have those type of conversations so you can understand, because I know there's plenty of times where I've said something, you probably like, girl, why did you say that? And there's times where you said something, I'm like, Shania, you didn't have to do that. So it's just like, again, you don't understand the dynamics that are happening until you just have certain conversations. It's like, oh, okay, like, now I understand it. I mean, obviously, you're not going to know every single little tad bit thing, but, it's important to, be open and honest, because it just makes, again, going back to communication, it just makes it so much easier to understand, digest, move forward certain things, and accept certain things, because there's a lot of things, again, like we've talked about before, that we're still holding on to, that's holding us back from really having those type of conversations, having those type of relationships that we want, whether it's one person still being upset about something, whether it's one person still holding on to something that happened, 30 years ago when it's just being passed down. Communication is just so important in understanding our parents, understanding ourselves, understanding our extended parents, whether it's your friends' parents, grandmas, whatever. It's so important that we have these types of conversations, because it'll never really, I don't want to say get comfortable, because you can't be comfortable with your parents and seeing them as, seeing my mom as D, as her nickname, or seeing my mom as Mommy. So, you can see them as a two, but it's still, again, with Black people, it's always that level of respect. You can see Mommy as Mommy, but don't be calling Mommy D. Like, hey, D. My mom would look at me and slap me with her eyes without even moving. Like, bro, stop. So, yeah, man, I think communication is just a big portion again.
100%. I always tell people it's not necessarily, and I think this is something I learned from my mom, it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. And growing up in my household, you just had to be very, very sure of what you were saying, because you just wanted to, you needed to know the consequences that would come after what you said. And I think, like you said, just growing up and knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to talk to your parents, and knowing how to have that respect, and know not to cross that line, and know not to say something that will bring out an emotion you've never seen in them. That was definitely a key part of surviving, because you don't know. People snap easily. People snap so easily. And you could have known them for 30, 50 years. That could be your great aunt. But you say something, and all of a sudden, the relationship is gone. Now it's, I'll so-and-so you up. You don't know me like that. Blah, 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 blah. And you like, Aunt Susan, we were just in the backyard.
Right.
Standing next to the grill. Now all of a sudden, I don't know you like that. Aunt Susan, I'm going to need you to...
Auntie.
But, like, I think that because it's something that we just quickly forget, and because we set these super
high expectations
for our parents, it's difficult when they don't meet them. And I think we fail to realize that our parents have some expectations of us too that we don't always meet.
Right.
And when the shoe is on the other foot, how do we react to that?
Exactly.
Because it's like, you want mom to be this, and you want dad to do that, but then they ask of you to do X, Y, and Z, and you kind of just like,
fold.
Yeah, you fold on them, and then you don't understand why they're upset. But when the shoe's on the other foot, it's like, you had one job, and I can't believe, and blah, 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 blah.
That's true.
So I think it's always good to reverse the roles, because at the end of the day, we're all human.
I don't know. I'm very I know we're getting close to time, but I'm very grateful for my parents, you know. It could have been a lot worse, you know, again, like there's people going out there without parents, and I think that's something that I skip over a lot, you know, and being grateful for my mom, being grateful for my dad. You know, they're not perfect, but they're doing, again, the best that they can with the situation that they have, and you know, they're not doing a shabby job. Like there ain't gunshots outside, you know, we're not stepping over crack needles and stuff like that. Like, we're living fairly comfortable. Maybe not as comfortable as other people, but we're not necessarily out here pinching pennies either, you know? So I'm very thankful for the life that they have allowed for me, the life that God has, you know, allowed for me as well. But, you know, to place them in my life, because I wouldn't be the person that I am if I didn't have the parents and the family that I do. So I'm very grateful for them.
100%. Whether we like our parents or not, they definitely play a significant role in shaping who we are. And their parents played a significant role in shaping who they are. And at the end of the day, as human beings, we can tweak little things that we don't like, and we can change, you know, well, I don't want to be like this, so let me do it this way so that I don't end up like that. But it's like you said, my parents did the best that they could with what they had, and I didn't turn out half bad. I mean, like, we were just laughing at this the other day. My mom had 6 shots, and, you know, one of us got to strike it big. I don't know who it's going to be, but she had 6 shots, and I think she's got some pretty good players on the team. I mean, in basketball, you only get 5 on the court, and then you got your reserves on the bench. So one of us is going to be the reserve on the bench. I guess that'll be Justin because he's the youngest. But with the 5 that's out here, you know, we ain't doing half bad. And, like, I like to chalk that up to my parents, especially my mom, because for a while she was doing it by herself. And you don't really appreciate things until you get older.
Yeah.
And that's when you start to realize, yes, this is what it took to get here. And had they not done that, I would not be where I am today. And it's the same way with your own actions. But parents really, really take a lot of flack sometimes because kids don't realize. Yeah, kids, we fail to give them the credit that is due to them. And then, unfortunately, some kids really just do get to that point where they feel like they no longer need their parents, or they are better than their parents.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that happening. I don't want to speak that into existence, but I just think that it's good to take time to reflect and to really appreciate who they are. Because sometimes you find out your parents was real cool.
Yeah. So moral of the story, y'all, hug on your parents, give them some love today. If you haven't spoken to them in a while, just give them a call to say you love them and thank them, because they didn't have to. I mean, I know God says, you know, you're supposed to, but honestly, they didn't have to. So shout out to all the mommies, the daddies, everyone playing mommy and daddy too. Shout out to all of y'all. Y'all are appreciated. And we love you. We thank you. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Are we sipping or shotting?
Dag. I feel like this is a sip-in. I feel like, you know, it can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes. And especially, like you said, when you feel like you're so right about something and, you know, you want them to be a certain way, but, you know, you can't, it's out of your control. Like, you can't control everything in your life. So I think I'm sipping some champagne today.
I would have to agree. I feel like you always have to play the hand that you're dealt. And I laughed because I was watching this video and she was like, if you weren't my family, you wouldn't be my friends. Like, she, like, the way that her family was set up, she was just like, I don't like none of y'all. And I'm sure we all have our moments like that, but for the most part, I would not change how I was raised. I would not change who is in my life, because it's like, they did a pretty good job. And like she said, go call mom, go call dad. If you still live in the house, go upstairs to their room or something like that, and just let them know that they appreciate it. Tupac voice, because it's like,
you will appreciate it.
Listen, family, all you got at the end of the day, and it's it's definitely one of those conversations where we learned something. We got a lot of insight. We shared stories. Y'all probably know a little too much about our families now.
Exactly. Might as well bring them on at this point.
LOL. Next Thanksgiving, if we're not in a panoramic, you can stop by.
Ooh.
But no, I think today was a healthy conversation, and it was a funny one. Like it wasn't
too serious.
Yeah.
There was no tears this time.
No tears. But yeah, we thank you for tuning in. We thank you for listening, watching, sharing, whatever it is that you do with this. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.